Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the program Agriculture on the Move. I am Philip Sidney, your host. With me today is Mr. Kemuel Jn, who is the Chief Extension Officer attached to the Department of Agriculture in the Ministry of Agriculture. Welcome to the program, Mr. Jn.
It's always a pleasure to be on this program. Thank you for having me today. Yeah.
Kemuel, the ministry in its new strategy for its program for this year is looking at the reduction of our food import bill.
Yes.
One of the alarming things for me personally was the importation of crops that can be grown here readily.
Yes.
Cabbage, tomatoes, lettuce, sweet pepper, and watermelon. These things you and I know can be grown here,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
We have the environment that is readily suited for the growth of these crops. What is the ministry doing to ensure that the reduction of the imports of those crops are reduced? I wouldn't say to be curtailed, but reduced to the level whereby the farmers can grow these crops readily and to get monies, and the money can stay in Saint Lucia.
So thank you very much for that question. Thanks to our minister who saw the need to do two things. Reduce the import bill, but also this is about creating livelihood opportunities. A farmer can produce and market. It presents an opportunity to engage in more farming activities. What we've done is looked at the figures. We've determined the import volumes. We've also determined, based upon these import volumes, what will be required on our part in St. Lucia to fulfill, in the interim or in the first stage, 30% of the imports. Coming out of that determination, we have decided what the potential acreage would be. One would understand that there's diversity in terms of expected outputs in different locations. So we came up with some figures as to what the expected acreage is for those particular crops. I know the public might be aware of what these crops are, but let me just quickly reiterate. This includes lettuce, cabbage, tomatoes, sweet peppers, pineapples, watermelons, and cantaloupes. So these crops, we've looked at the acreages for them, and what we're looking forward to do, we've already spoken with the farmers concerning that. The other thing that is critical here is to engage the buyers. We are aware that some of our biggest buyers, local purchasers, are also some of our biggest importers, our supermarket chain, among others. And so now we need to engage and collude with them. We need to get their gentlemanly commitment to this process that says, look, we will support you in this endeavor. By now, most of our audience would be aware the challenges associated with staying in the market, the issues of seasonality, the issues of the risk associated with climate change events and weather events. These things we have no control over. And so understanding that, we are hoping that the buyers are going to commit themselves to helping the farmers trade in these particular crops. So having determined what the acreage is and having determined also what the potential inputs are, we have good news. The minister has committed to sourcing assistance. We're talking about assistance with certain kinds of inputs, with certain subsidies and so on. We're hoping that we'll be able to get some additional subsidies to help the farmers to get these crops into production. Very critical to Sid is the issue of greenhouses. If we are going to effectively execute that particular program, because you're not talking about, abundance in December like we normally have, December to January, and then when you come September, you can't find these crops. We're talking about maintaining consistency. The greenhouse aspect of it comes as a result of us needing to maintain consistency in the market. When we face the rainy season, we're talking from, let's say, about September going all the way to about February. The heavy rains leaves open fields extremely vulnerable. You don't know what you're going to get. A heavy downpour on an open field lettuce crop could end the crop. So what we're hoping is that we'll get greenhouse farmers who are going to commit to this process. In determining the acreage, we have already identified a number of persons who have committed to growing these crops, the ones that can be grown in the greenhouses. We're talking the lettuce, the sweet peppers and the tomatoes and so on. Those that can be grown, and to a lesser extent the cantaloupes. The cantaloupes are very fragile in open field as well. We have already identified some persons who are committing to participate, so we have allotted a certain acreage that we're hoping that the farmers are going to cultivate under the greenhouse. And this is geared towards ensuring that at all times of year, we have consistency. When we come to the drier periods of the year, the open field is pretty easy to manage. We're talking irrigation. Post-Matthew, we had gotten some support with irrigation equipment and so on. So some of that is going to be used to help those farmers to maintain the consistency of production in the dry season. So there is going to be some support. Again, it takes a while for us to sift through this whole process to determine who are the most needing beneficiaries and who are the people who are going to optimize the use of these inputs that we are going to provide. We don't want, this is not a free-for-all, this is not, as we say in our Saint Lucian language, that's not a freeness that everyone can bounce on board and waste it. We want persons who are going to commit to this process, use these inputs that are being provided, and get the crops growing. What is the role of extension in all of this? It is about identifying the farmers, it is about engaging the farmers, it is about giving the farmers the kind of technical advisories and support that is required. Now, also along with that, Sid, is we are facing a reality of changing production climates. Earlier on in the lobby, you and I were talking about the issue of the greenhouse and the challenges. We have a lot of pest disease problems associated with the soil environment. And in some cases, if a person visits Saint Lucia and a few other places, you might see farmers now moving to producing in bags. So they've covered the soil and they're using potted bags. For the greenhouses that we had gotten from the Mexican government as a gift, we had also used the grow bags. One of the challenges associated with that is that we need a proper functioning diagnostic facility. After each crop cycle, we need to go and assess what's in those grow bags in terms of nutrition. And we also need to ensure that we provide those plants with a complete nutrition set to ensure that we optimize the production using that production system. One of the challenges we have as we speak is that we have a limited amount of capacity, technical capacity where that is concerned. A lot of people talk about the hydroponics, a lot of people talk about the aquaponics and using the soilless medium, the grow bags, but that requires close monitoring. So we need to ensure that we prepare our change agents, our field officers, to ensure that they have the knowledge that is required. But also on the part of the farmer, it requires an knowledge, ensuring that they have the adequate knowledge, but also an attitudinal shift. This is not about putting a plant in the ground and the soil provides a massive amount of micronutrients. You're talking about a situation where you have to determine what that plant needs and provide it. And so when you look at this whole program of import reduction, it's not a walk through the park. This is not saying we know what the crops are and the farmers are producing it, let's go out there and produce it. There are a lot of other things on the parameters. I mean, some of these technicalities I spoke about. Then we talk about the scheduling. Who grows what, when? How can we influence the farmers to agree with us on a particular schedule of production? And when I say us, I'm talking about the ministry and the buyers. Because here's a case, if you go out and do as you please, it creates certain kinds of challenges for us. And so the public, the growing public, the farming public can anticipate that there will be additional support provided. But along with that, we will expect their commitment in staying in production, their commitment to agree to schedules of production, not as easy as I'm making it sound, but we're hoping that this is going to happen as we move forward with that particular program.
We're about to take our first break. When we come back, I want to ask you, for example, where are we now with this project?
Yes.
You know, and whether the farmers that you have targeted, you know, have the commitment to undertake the training that you will impart to them.
Yes.
Because right now agriculture is high tech.
It is getting there.
And especially going into hydroponics, you know, and aquaponics. That's high tech.
Medium,
and the soilless medium. So there is need now for younger farmers to come in, and the training is very important. So we do for our first break. When you come back,
we'll continue our conversation. Yes.
Stay tuned. We'll be back soon.
What's in the food you're eating? Do you really even know? All the chemicals and hormones used to accelerate their growth. All the artificial flavoring, sweeteners and colors too. We consume and we don't spare a thought for the damage that they'll do. No, Think about the children. Think about the children. How will we save them? Chemicals and GMOs are not the solution. Use organic and join.
Excessive agrochemical use, additives, and genetically modified foods are harmful to health and the environment. Join the good food revolution. Grow, buy, and consume organic. A message from Rise Saint Lucia and the Ministry of Sustainable Development with funding from the GEF Small Grants Program, UNDP.
The good food revolution.
Welcome back. It's a good food revolution. We need to eat fresh. St. Lucia's best. Eat what we produce is the better for us, better health, and the money stays here. Kemuel,
Yes.
that program, like I asked you earlier, have it started? And critically, as I said, you know, are the farmers really buying into it? Are they conditioned enough to say, okay, my area is of conduciveness to grow cabbage and not to grow tomatoes, and I will stick to grow cabbage because I can only grow cabbage the best?
Yeah. We're at a place where we have already engaged the farmers, and we started that engagement since last year. What we did, we went into because we needed to determine who would be interested and what the acreages are. So the field officers already had community meetings where they introduced it from a little while back. In fact, we may have to revisit some of the community meetings to make sure that folks are still on board, because people change their minds and so on. So we've engaged them. And we've already gotten commitment in terms of acreages. What sort of acreages each farmer is willing to grow, you know, or what area do you have available in terms of producing. Here's a challenge, Sid. If you visit any farm in any part of this country, we have changing seasons, and I mean it's just wet and dry. But as a ministry, we advocate crop rotation. So this is not a case where we're going to ask a farmer to maintain production of one specific crop throughout the entire year. We understand the need for crop rotation and so on. Also, because they're changing times of year, in high rainfall areas, there are times of year when they can grow these wet tolerant crops, like cabbages could take a lot of rain. But during the dry periods, these guys could very well grow crops such as watermelon, perhaps, and tomatoes that would thrive best in these conditions. I'm talking about highland areas like Forest, highland areas like the tops of Millet and Dewash and so on. As the rain intensifies, the cabbages and so on become the better crop because they can tolerate the rains. Correct. When the off-season comes, we would like for them to do crop rotation, so use alternate crops. And yes, we have 7 crops, but there are other things that we need them to rotate with, like sweet potatoes, to break cycles that affect vegetables. So it's not a simple solution. It requires a lot of thinking, and it requires a lot of agreement and partnership on the part of the farmers. As we move along, there will be glitches, there will be hitches, but we are hoping that we will stay focused, and producers and buyers alike will understand the dynamics. There will be a lot of information sharing. So, for example, if you anticipate from farmer X a certain volume and it's not happening, we'll get that information ahead of time so that we can make the necessary adjustments. It's not going to be a walk through the park. A farmer made a remark at one of the purchase points. He said, while one farmer was asking to produce limited quantities to maintain price for the farmer, that is, the other farmer said, no, we need to produce so that there always is excess. There's always excess. Now, who's right? The guy who's saying let's stifle production so that we could maintain price, or are we saying the guy who say let's always have excess? Because if you always have excess, it means that there's no need to import. They both have some measure of rightness, but guess what? When the excess is there, the farmer loses, in a sense of speaking, because the price will drop.
But the consumer benefits.
Consumer benefits.
That's right.
So these are the kind of conversations that you want to have with producers, and it's not going to be an easy thing, but we are hoping as we get commitment that we could actually make this right. Keep in mind, the ultimate goal of this is 2 things: to ensure that the farmer has livelihood opportunities, that he could produce and sell as much, and of course the issue of ensuring that we maintain some of our foreign earnings locally. And hopefully, if this thing goes well, we can start talking regional exports and so on, regional trades.
The problem is, I drive around the island and I'm seeing a number of the greenhouses abundant and with no cover. What's the situation with those greenhouses? And secondly, are we still going the tunnel way? Because I know there are some new greenhouses looking the way forward.
Yes.
Where are we at?
The tunnel has done its job. The tunnel was introduced with support from the French Technical Mission for Cooperation in the late 80s. The whole idea was to cut off the rain. We were having a lot of problems back then with rain. As soon as October, September, November came in, the rains were messy. So those were designed to take off the rain. You had to do everything else. The soil condition, you had to treat with that pest and disease. We've introduced a couple new designs from out of Jamaica, out of Israel and so on. These are completely enclosed with screens, insect screens, but they still pose the same problem with the soil condition. We have brought in those from the Mexican government where we use grow bags. But like I said, these are challenged when it comes to the technical and the diagnostic part of it. And so we do encourage persons to, if you already have the tunnel, to utilize it. Keep in mind that you're going to utilize this at a particular time of year. Those that you see uncovered, there are a couple of reasons why. Because you do not get downpours from the rain, all you're getting is drip irrigation in most cases. Some farmers uncover these greenhouses during the rainy period at certain times of year to allow for down showers, to do what is called leaching of nutrients. Sometimes salts build up in the A horizon, the upper horizon. So you basically uncover this thing so that it could get, you know, natural rain. And if you appreciate the value of the Sahara dust, for argument's sake, if you could get some of that inside of there and so on. That's one. Two, in coastal areas, these greenhouses, it becomes so hot that I have seen instances where the plastic gets burnt by the lines that's supposed to support it, the supporting frame, it gets burnt. So what farmers do sometimes in the dry season, they remove the cover. But there's a dynamic that takes place. When you put in the cover, it stretches and so on. When you take it off and you have to replace it, there's a cost associated. Then you have the issues of storms and imminent storms and storm damage. Farmers go in and they remove it when a storm is imminent and may not have the expertise to replace it. So it ends up staying uncovered. And the ones that do get burned, you're talking about a greenhouse plastic that is cost from anywhere from $400 to $500 per sheet. And some persons are not necessarily willing at the time or are able to invest that kind of money. And then you're talking about the cost of installation. So all of these impact on why these greenhouses remain covered or uncovered. And in some cases, the soil realities, people become frustrated because you keep growing the same crop. And most times, if you look around, they do a lot of lettuce, peppers, sweet peppers, tomatoes, and some herbs. Now, if you continue this crop consistently, the soil fauna builds up, and some is not only the good bacteria and so on, the bad ones build up, and it becomes a problem to cultivate these crops. So the farmer becomes frustrated, and he leaves it here. It's actually a fallow, if you think about it. He allows it a little fallow, and hopefully when he gets back, it's going to be better. Yeah.
Training for the farmers. I know your Taiwanese on stream, and then you have your farmer field school. Tell us a little about this.
Right. So we have the Taiwanese Technical Mission. Thanks to them, as always, they provide us with inputs of various sorts and technical assistance. The farmer field school, which is a discovery-based learning method, which is learning by doing, we still continue, and they've been supporting that learning methodology for a very long time. Currently, we have a farmer field school running in the Roseau area.
Hold that thought. We'll come back to this.
All right.
You're watching Agriculture on the Move. Stay tuned.
Everyone is at risk for getting a foodborne illness. While most foodborne illness cases are mild and go unreported, long-term health complications and even death can occur from a foodborne illness. Foodborne illnesses are caused by contamination of food at any stage of preparation. If you are a food handler involved in home-based food production, meat, fish, chicken, or a bake shop, as a food vendor, how you prepare food can put your customers at risk. Do you know the risks and how to avoid them? The Saint Lucia Bureau of Standards can help you.
For more information, contact the Saint Lucia Bureau of Standards at 456-0546 or email slbs@candw.lc or visit the website at www.slbs.org.lc. Saint Lucia Bureau of Standards, making quality and standards our way of life.
Welcome back to the program. Yeah, the question I asked you earlier on concerning the Taiwanese
yes.
and the field school.
Yes.
Briefly give us.
Yes, so they're supporting us both financially and otherwise. So we're running a field school right now in the Roseau area looking at some of the cucurbits. Basically, you bring the farmers to the field once a week, every week for the entire life of the crop, from sowing of the seed all the way to the harvesting. As a matter of fact, for that particular field school, graduation is next week Wednesday at the how you call it? Roseau Secondary School? Marigo Secondary School.
Yeah.
Basically, those farmers have been, we had about 40 farmers participating. From that, a number of the farmers who have participated will be getting some support. The support includes seedlings, some ground cover that they're now going to take and go to back to the farms to implement. The farmers that are participating are very specifically related, those in the geographic area of Region 7, millet and environs. So that's not for the whole country, that's just for that particular area. And so we'll continue to use that methodology to teach and train farmers in many other areas. Since we introduced the methodology in about 2009, thereabout, I think we've probably executed pretty much 12 to 15 of these training sessions.
So that's farmer registration program, is it?
No, that's a training. Yeah, that's a field school to provide training on growing a very specific crop.
Crops, okay.
So for example, this one was focused on the honeydew melons and the watermelons.
Great.
Yeah.
So speak about farmer, as we go in quickly, farmer registration that leads you into certification.
Right. So from since 2001, we started this program of registering farmers. So basically we brought the farmers in for a period of about 2 hours for 6 weeks, 2 hours per day for 6 days. We introduced them to certification standards. This would be GAP certification standards. Originally, when the program rolled out, the intention was you introduce the farmer to the standard, and then the farmer begins to adopt these standards, and we do the auditing. We have not been able to get the auditing off of the ground or to sort it out. So more recently, we have a team headed by Randall at the ministry. They, together with AICA, have been reviewing the whole concept of the farmer certification and registration certification. So we just on the verge of getting to the place where we're reintroducing the farmers to what these standards are and to share with them the associated costs, because someone has to come in and audit the farm and to see whether you comply and so on what needs to happen in order for you to get that certification. The recommendation has been made that we ensure that the certification is consistent with Europe GAP standards, so that this is not just a local standard, but that we're looking at something that's more regional, international. So if you get a farmer into export, for argument's sake, whether it's regional or international export, they already have the certification required for them to participate in international.
Clear on the objective of this, because a lot of people, they hear registration and they're mixing it with certification. And what are the objectives, basically?
Right. Registration of a farmer, if you're going to participate in the in government's incentives, you need to be registered as a farmer. You need to be registered with the ministry. If you're going to sell or trade locally, you need to be registered. So there needs to be something that says that yes, you're a farmer. You don't want a guy picking up stuff that he probably might have stolen and trading in it. Registration says that this is an authentic farmer and this is what his area of trading is. He's into vegetable, root crops, and so on and so forth. This is associated with the work that we're doing in predial larceny. So a registered farmer now could say, I'm registered, so that you don't get haggled by a predial larceny unit trying to verify your status as a farmer. In terms of certification, certification is just about assurances. This is about assuring the consumer that they're getting an excellent product, that you are following a system of production,
wholesome product
that provides the consumer with a wholesome product. We're looking at issues of traceability and so on, with the volumes of pesticides being used in agricultural production of any sort, both livestock and crop. We need to be able to trace back where these things are coming from. And so this is not just an act. This is a system of managing trade, production and trade within the sphere of agriculture. And so that is what this certification is about. And this is about periodic certification. This is not to say one shot today, you're certified and that leaves you certified for the rest of your life. Periodically, there will be audits made to ensure that the producer is maintaining standards. Now, I'm making a very simplistic presentation of it here. It is not as simple as I'm making it sound. There's a lot more that is involved in terms of ensuring the extension officer goes in there, identify what the gaps are, and help the farmer to take appropriate steps to close up these gaps, and then to allow the auditor now to come in and to assess the work that has been done to make sure that it's up to par.
That takes me to export, because once you have reached that level, then of course you're export ready.
That's right.
Where is the situation here with, I know you're linking with TIPA.
Yes.
Tell us about this marriage.
Right. So agriculture, in order for our agriculture to further benefit us, we need to get into the exports. Now, we've already done banana exports. We've traditionally done some exports with plantains, with the fruits like breadfruit and so on. We are facing a severe challenge. Cocoa and so on we've been exporting. We are facing a severe challenge with the non-banana crops. A lot of people are calling in for these crops, but we don't have the acreage that is required. Not just the acreage, but the organization of production. You want to buy mangoes from a farmer. Apart from what used to be Windward Island Tropical at Choiseul that had 20 or so acres of mangoes, and Union, Vale, and Petit Dale, some of the estates, Everywhere in this country, mangoes are scattered everywhere. It's a nightmare for any trader to go and get these mangoes and to get them ready for market. And so the issue of volumes, the issue of where these are at, are posing a severe challenge. As extension over the years, together with propagation, we've been planting a lot of fruit trees, but it's not in a well-organized space that you walk into an orchard and these things are there. What we need to do now is to find buyers who have niche markets. Again, the seasonality of it demands that we do niche marketing when it comes to trading, in particularly in the fruits and the fruit crops that we are exporting. And so, very often when persons come to my office, I always give a cautionary note. If a person says they're interested in export, find out a few things for me. What is it that they need? What quantities do they need? How frequently do they need this? And what are they willing to pay the farmer? Price matters severely. Recently, we had an opportunity to export plantain. And when the buyer came in, I asked, what is being offered? The buyer was offering about 30-something cents. Now listen to this. On the local market, there are certain times of year you can't even find here a ripe plantain. The local purchasers are offering $1 and beyond. We already have a problem. The farmer now is not opportunity cost, is not going to put in that crop, is not willing to put in that crop to sell at 30 cents. And so as soon as these requests come, we need to pay attention to these dynamics to ensure that the crop is actually available, that the farmer is willing to put in what is required at that price in order for us to effectively export these crops. And so over the next, we've been working with multiple agencies in providing refrigeration, in providing training in issues related to post-harvest handling and so on, but it's still not enough. We're at a point, something that may not even cross your mind is the issue of change of land use. Out of our 20 or so estates, identified estates, a fair portion, maybe 15 or more of them, have gone into agrotourism. The fondos, all of them. Think of any of the Soufre estates, all have gone into agrotourism. There are cottages and so on. That's loss of production. Apart from that, the change of land use is shrinking the area available for agriculture. What are we exporting? We need to pay attention to these and have the conversations before we just go ahead and say we want to export. The other thing that's happening, we've been promoting cottage industry and value added. We have Mikud chocolate. We have Foaso chocolate. We have Nick Trubeskov chocolate. And we have a few other chocolates. Yes. It means that the cocoa that we will use to export as raw material now is producing a secondary product, is producing a high-end product. So it means that there's less cocoa for export. And if the Hotel Chocolat does as they had pledged, they will be producing the chocolate bars right here. So there's a challenge in terms of availability of these resources for export.
Comrade, we end, We end. Final word.
Final word, hurricane season. As we're asking the farmers to pay attention, check on your greenhouses, make sure that your situation, that you're paying attention to what's happening, because the hurricanes, even if we don't get a full-fledged hurricane, we will get heavy winds, we will get heavy rains. We could talk later on about how you could go ahead and prepare, but still pay attention to the NEMOs and check with your field extension officers as to how you could better prepare your farm in the case of an imminent storm.
Great. Yeah? Comrade. Kemuel Jn, Baptiste, ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Extension Officer in the Ministry of Agriculture. Thank you again for being here, and I wish you success. And of course, we'll come back again because there's so much more to talk about. Climate change, the effect on the farmer and, production, etc., etc. So thank you again for being here. Thank you, NTN, for the team for recording this program. And remember, agriculture is our business, and eat fresh again, Saint Lucia's best. I'm Philip Sidney. Goodbye. Yes, man. All the best.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.